Chapter 11 New Man in Town, Athena's POV. I kept my distance away from Candace and Regan, giving them the freedom to do whatever they liked, while at the same time, I started to explore. I couldn't mope forever, and if there's one thing that my father taught me, was to observe and study my environment. He once told me, know the lay of the land like the back of your hand, and you'll never be able to be tied down for long. So I did exactly that. I stepped out, and luckily, I met a couple of women willing to let me into their fold, and the next 3 hours ran by with me laughing at their antics and dropping suggestions when necessary. I was so lost in arguing about the difference between silk and cashmere that we didn't hear someone walk in. A shadow fell over us, and I looked up to Cyril, who quickly avoided my eyes. Please, we have a visitor, and it's usually customary to welcome them, so we have to go downstairs. I grabbed my wine just in case, wondering who the newcomer could be and why the fanfare. There certainly wasn't any when it was my turn. I half suspected it was another woman because, at this point, I was just numb to everything, so seeing another woman walk in to be with Regan would not in the least be shocking to me. We all walked down, including Earl, but I hovered behind, not wanting to seem too forward since I did not indicate who it was. To my surprise, Candace came rushing out as soon as the stranger got down from the car and rushed to hug him. They spent a couple of minutes with their head bent down in conversation before Candace squealed. The stranger, who looked too bulky to be a female, reached up to tug the cloak over his head away, and I involuntarily sucked in a sharp breath. My gods, he was beautiful. Regan had this harsh yet compelling beauty, but this guy could pass off to be a model. His dimpled cheeks, strong jawline, and plump lips, not to talk about his eyes, and the scruff of his beard gave him this bad boy vibe. I was getting sucked up in this guy's intensity when Regan walked out. I instantly made myself appear smaller, not wanting to be seen, but Regan picked up on my presence. It seemed Regan and this blonde-haired man were friends because Regan's cheeks split into a smile as soon as they met, and they did this bro handshake. Regan gestured for me to come closer, and the guy's eyes flicked up to mine, stealing the very breath from my lungs. I admonished myself for getting worked up over a stranger. After all, I did the same for Regan and see where it got me. So this is the lovely Athena? Regan drew me to his side, but I subtly distanced myself, pasting on a smile. Athena, this is Cyril. Cyril, Athena. It's a pleasure, he purrs, bending down to kiss the back of my knuckles. I blushed and looked away, wondering why I was getting so worked over this guy. I mumbled an excuse, feeling flustered and out of place, sequestering myself for the rest of the night. I tried to sleep after my usual routine of meditating and reading before bed, but each time I closed my eyes, Cyril's face flashed through my mind, and I kept obsessing over every freckle, spot, or mark on his face. I tossed and turned, my dreams filled with images of the new stranger. The next morning, I headed downstairs to eat, only to be surprised to see people fill up the space, apparently in welcome of the Cyril guy. Who was he? I grabbed a plate and found somewhere quiet to eat, all the whole searching for Cyril with my eyes. Like a magnet, I saw him, and immediately he looked up too, our gazes colliding. He smiled crookedly, throwing a 2-fingered salute my way, and I blushed, hiding my head. Regan's POV. Cyril had always been a flirt and a charmer, even from birth, and I didn't have a problem with it since he was discreet with his affairs, but this was one thing I wouldn't tolerate. I noticed Athens had been looking at him oddly yesterday, which I brushed off as being introduced to a stranger, but today? No. The looks they were exchanging can't be described as friendly. Against my better judgment, I grew jealous, and when Cyril blew Athena a kiss, and she giggled, her face lighting up, I wished I was the one who placed a smile on her face. I stood up suddenly, ignoring Candace's protests, and went over to Athena's seat, blocking her view. Her smile dimmed as soon as she saw me, and her lips curled up in annoyance. "What are you doing here?" she asked, not touching her food. "You've been ignoring me." As soon as the words left my mouth, I knew it was the wrong thing to say. "I'm ignoring you?" Disbelief was evident in her tone. "You know what? Forget it." Athena stands up to leave, but I snag her wrist. "Wait." She jerks her hand out of mine as if I were a hot iron. "Whatever you think you want to tell me, save it. You've made it clear you don't want me. So you should also know that I have no place by your side. Not if you keep treating me like this." Leaving a trail of anger burning, Athena storms out on him. Athena's POV, imagine that ass ordering me around. Sometimes I wish I had access to his brain so I could understand what goes on in there. He acts like I don't exist when it suits him, and when it doesn't, he's all over me. Fuck that. Later that evening, I head out for training and I'm surprised to see Cyril fitted in sports gear as one of the trainers. I'm not going to lie and say I didn't put in the extra work now that his eyes were on me. I felt his eyes track my every movement, and while I didn't rebuff his actions, I didn't answer him either. It was like putting two caged animals in a cage, waiting for them to pounce. The atmosphere got so heated when he was training me that I dropped the barbell, almost hitting my face in the process. After that, I skipped out and didn't come out again until it was time for the bonfire night. Sighting a couple of familiar faces, I chose the spot closer to the tree so I could rest my back. I reached forward to grab a red cup for the beer they were passing around, and someone appeared next to me, not thinking much about it. I passed him a cup. "I don't drink beer." Cyril's amused voice floated to my ears. I looked up with a startle. Hey. I cringed inwardly at such a crappy greeting. "Thanks." He handed the cup back to me. "What are you doing out here?" "Was bored." I took a sip from my cup to wet my suddenly dry throat. I'm a regular. I created this little gathering." He spreads his arms to encompass the wide space. Several guys walked past us, stopping to greet him. "Really?" I arched a brow. "Who are you?" I said with a pointed glance at another person that greeted him. "The moon goddess," he said with a straight face, and it was hard to decipher if he was serious or not. I hummed, not sure what to make of it. "That was a joke." He chuckled, his smooth tone making me laugh along with him. "A bad joke, though." I couldn't agree much, but that endeared me to him even more. Chapter 12, Fun Activities. Athena's POV. "Cyril, where are you?" A smile immediately blossomed on my face as soon as I saw that text message. I grabbed my phone and typed out a response. "Me? Dressing up? You?" I wasn't expecting to reply so soon, but less than 5 seconds passed before I got a corresponding notification. "Cyril, waiting for you, beautiful." Seeing the message made me blush so hard, and that was when I smacked myself in the forehead. "Snap out of it," I hissed under my breath. I stared at my reflection in the mirror, reciting some much-needed pep talk. "He doesn't like you like that. He's just being nice, and even if he does, it's going nowhere," I sighed, rubbing off the extra lipstick I pasted on my lips, and I looked down at my outfit. It was too late to change, so I decided to go like that. I was trying so hard to keep from catching feelings for Cyril since we had been spending so much time together. But it was getting increasingly harder to forget that I wasn't attracted to him. He even treated me better than my so-called mate. In the past week, I've taken a tour of the city, visited several places in town, have participated in several fun activities like hiking, waterboarding, and so on. I've never had that much fun in my entire life, and Cyril has this effortless way of getting me to agree to whatever crazy idea he comes up with, not to mention that he's hot and helps to take my mind off Regan and Candace. Pushing all that aside, I vowed to stop overthinking it and just let the cards fall where they might. After all, Regan and I were just a big, weird ball of entangled uncertainty. I skipped downstairs, ready for breakfast. Cyril and I talked for a couple of minutes before he went off to do some things, and then Regan sat beside me. I shot him a surprised look since we hadn't spoken after my outburst that day. The breakfast was pleasant enough, with laughter punctuating the conversations, and I mostly enjoyed myself, forgetting that Regan was next to me until he did this. He placed his hand on my lap. I stilled, my fork halfway to my lips as I stared at the side of his face. His face was impassive, not betraying a hint of what he was doing. He didn't move his hand though, so I decided to let it slide. Until he started roaming over my body, coming dangerously close to the V of my thighs. My body heated, instantly responding to him, but I felt at odds, so I grabbed his hand and flung it away. Bringing my lips to the shell of his ear, I made it in such a way that it appeared that we were talking intimately. "Don't you ever do that again." He inclined his head, staring at me with an apologetic look on his face. Hours later, Cyril coaxed me to go out with Regan, Candace, and him despite it being the last thing I wanted to do. I agreed because I was bored and Cyril would keep me as a buffer. Cyril was a fun tour guide as he dragged me around the marketplace, showing me his favorite stalls and things to buy. I stopped at a woman's stall to try on a scarf. She had these beautiful designs and patterned gowns that Cyril said would look amazing on me. "Here, let me help you with that," Cyril offered when I tried to tie a scarf around my head. I was debating on buying it. I dated Cyril's warmth behind me, and my eyes popped open. I could see his reflection in the mirror and his eyes strayed to mine, our gazes colliding. It felt like the world paused, or narrowed to just the two of us. "You're so beautiful. You know that, right?" He breathed in awe, his eyes soft. He leaned in to kiss the side of my neck. "Cyril." I tried to push him away, but my voice came out breathless. Just as his lips were about to touch the skin of my neck, Regan appeared in the doorway looking like someone pissed in his coffee. We jumped apart instantly like two guilty kids. "Cyril, I need you now." He barked and left. Cyril shot me an apologetic look and hurried after Regan. I exhaled roughly, placing my palms on top of the wooden dresser. I ended up buying other things except for the scarf. I didn't want a reminder of my stupidity again. Regan made up his mind to follow us ever. "What's his deal?" Cyril groused after Regan insisted they follow him to a bead shop. "Really?" I acted clueless, picking up a string of beads that had an African pattern. "What do you mean?" Cyril gave me an "Are you serious?" look before explaining, pointing a thumb Regan's way. "He's been an unbearable ass all day. I mean ever since you wanted to get that scarf." He trailed off, and I could practically see the pieces clicking in his mind. "Are you and him together?" He almost shouted the question, but I clamped my hand over his lips just in time. "No," I denied, looking over to where Candace wrapped herself around Regan like a candy wrapper. "How can we, with her around? So you're not together?" His eyes sparkled with hope, and I hated to be the one to kill it. "It's complicated," I sighed, fully facing him now. "I want him to leave me alone, but I'm stuck with the deal we made." Cyril opened his mouth to say something, but I never found out what it was because Regan called him away. We continued walking through the market, although I had already lost interest, wanting to go home already after Candace and Regan's sickening love display at the waterside. Cyril pulled me aside, giving me a wrapped parcel on our way back. Surprised, I tore open the wrapper with ill-hidden excitement, and my heart blossomed with happiness. It was so thoughtful and sweet, making me fall for Cyril even more. Chapter 20: Sun and Laughter. Athena's POV. I yawned and rolled over, only to encounter a solid wall of muscle. With my eyes still closed, I reached out to push it away, only to come in contact with warm skin. My eyes popped open, and I saw Regan sleeping on his side. He looked at rest, and his face appeared so peaceful that I propped my head on my hand to watch him. His thick lash fanned his cheeks, and looking closer, I could count several freckles on his face. He had stubble on his face because he hadn't shaved for a couple of days, and while he grumbled that it made him look like a caveman, I secretly loved the feel of it on my skin. When we kissed, and the short hairs tickled my skin, it ramps up the desire burning in my veins. It was already morning, and the birds were chirping excitedly outside. I can't believe I fell asleep while watching the movie that Regan picked out, but I guess I must have been so tired. My eyes trailed back down to Regan's beautiful face, and I couldn't resist the urge to trail my fingers down his face, his chin, and his lips. He was shirtless, and his tight, dark nipples looked appetizing enough to suck on, so I tried my hand over to the sparse hairs on his chest. But before I could run my hands over his body, as quick as a flash, Regan's hand shot up to grab mine. His eyes were still closed, but there was a smile on his lips. "So you were awake?" I laughed, jumping on his body. He groaned at my weight, and those beautiful eyes opened. Seeing Regan so carefree and happy did funny things to my insides. "I knew the moment you woke up," he admitted, his hands holding my hips loosely. "So you were pretending to sleep," I teased. "How could I deny you the right to gaze upon this magnificent body of work?" He grinned, his pesky whites peeking out. "Body of work, ho? Proud munch." I laughed before diving down to tickle his ribs, but he anticipated my move and smoothly changed position, pinning me down with one hand. I playfully tried to resist, but even having a loose hold on me, he was stronger than I expected, and I couldn't break free. Regan, however, was ruthless and tickled me badly, so much so that I exploded into a fit of laughter, desperately trying to escape his wicked hands. Rega ... and play. Please. I managed to breathe out during my fits, pleading for freedom. He jumped down, laughing so hard himself, and dashed into the bathroom. I kept on smiling even long after the incident. Regan prepared breakfast for me, though it was nothing too serious. Scrambled eggs, toast, and hash browns. Even though the eggs were a bit too dry for my taste, I appreciated his effort with a kiss which quickly turned steamy. This time I was the one that broke it off and jumped down from the counter. Regan tried to visibly control his urges before blurting out, "Want to go for a run?" "Is it safe?" I asked, peering out the window into the woods. While the location of the cabin was good for isolation, it was smack in the middle of the forest with trees all around. I only felt safe because Regan was with me, but even at that, only fates knew what was out there, lurking in the woods. "Of course it is." He picked up a bottle of water, downing it in one go. "Why, you scared?" The challenge in his tone made me snort. "Hell no. Bring it on." Regan explained the paths he uses when he goes on a run, so I do not go out of the property and encroach on another's. He went out first, taking off his clothes. I had only a moment to admire his firm-edged cheeks before he changed. I looked up in awe when I saw his full form for the first time. He was gorgeous. His fur was midnight black with spots of white in certain sections. He stood over 7 feet tall, with a massive head and scary-looking canines. Judging by Regan's size, I had suspected his wolf would be big, but this was massive. Regan let out a growl, tilting his head to the side. I walked down the steps, a bit afraid. I stared into his eyes, silently communicating if I could touch. Getting my answer, I touched his fur. It was so silky, gliding through my hands like fine sand. Up close, his eyes were no longer dark, but had flecks of gold in them. I stepped back when Regan impatiently nudged me, waiting for me to change. Mine wasn't as smooth as his and was painful, but I braved through it, and minutes later, all white wolves stood in the exact spot I was. Regan walked around me. Before nipping me in the butt ... he set off like a bullet. My cue to take off after him. He was fast for his size, but considering my build, I was faster. I moved ahead of him, which made Regan howl, but in a playful way. His body slammed into mine, making me lose balance, and we rolled in the dirt. We played around dirtying ourselves before I started running again. To be honest, it felt good to run in my vol form feeling the sun beat down on my body. Running with Regan made it 10 times better. Not only was it fun, but Regan was protective, showing where to go and where not to. After 2 hours of running around in the sun, we trotted back home side by side in silence and changed. Going our separate way to shower and change, we reconvened on the porch swing holding each other and watching the sunset while the daylight faded. I was content with my life, happy and fulfilled with my mate by my side. Little did I know. Chapter 19: The Acknowledgement. Regan's POV. I opened my eyes to watch Athena, whose eyes were closed in meditation, my eyes devouring every inch of her skin. Her hair was swept up on her head, away from her face, and her lips were pink, soft, and pouty. This woman here already had my heart in her dainty little palm, but she didn't know it yet. Her smile and her laughter were enough to lighten up my day. I couldn't deny how happy I was having her all to myself. Watching her traipse around town with Cyril made me extremely jealous, opening my eyes to how she felt every time she saw me with Candace. And I, like a fool, flaunted her in front of Athena. I couldn't take back what I did, but going forward, I would try to give her as much of me as I could allow. I tucked a strand of hair that escaped her messy bun behind her ear, and Athena's expressive green eyes glanced at me. "You're not meditating. Looking at you is more than enough for me," I confess, and it was true. I could spend hours, days just staring at her. Athena blushed. "Looking away, stop. You flatter me too much. You deserve it. Do you not?" My eyes dipped to her chest, where her breasts were straining the confines of her top. "Tell me about you," I blurt, suddenly realizing I don't know anything about her. Contrary to what people expect, I barely knew anything other than her name. "What do you want to know?" She started to stretch, giving me ideas for that position she was in. "Anything. Your home, your childhood." "I don't know the important things," she sighed, stopping her stretches. It seems that this was a sensitive topic to her. Athena sat down beside me, popping off the cap of her drink. "Are you sure you want to come here? It's not your regular Kitty's story." She had this sad look in her eyes, and I wanted to do everything in my power to wipe it away. "Of course, I want to hear." I took her hand. "But you don't have to tell me if you don't want to." "It's nothing." She shrugged it off, but I could tell that whatever she was about to say was something heavy. My childhood was horrible. My former pack, before I took over as Alpha, was in danger. The Alpha then was evil, so wicked and heartless that he should decrees that we had no choice but to obey. I drew her in, but Athena was tensed up, and from the way her eyes were vacant, I could tell she was no longer with me, but reliving that memory. I grew up not having any female friends because all the women were killed immediately after childbearing, and if they gave birth to a female pup, they were both killed. She sucked in a breath. I could feel her pain. The Alpha and his council members decided that females were nothing more than an incubator. The only reason why I was kept alive was because the priest had seen a vision about me. Funny, isn't it? She gave me a watery smile, tears gathering at the corner of her eyes. Athena, my heart was breaking for her, and I didn't want to hear any more. "It's okay." She pushed out a shuddering breath. "I'm past it. I just don't know why these pesky tears are falling." So yeah, apparently, I was supposed to bring prosperity to the land or some shit, and if they killed me, a great evil would befall the land. "I wish they just killed me," she whispered. "They kept me in prison and starved because they feared me. To break me, they would rape my mother over and over again until she died. In the end, my father was the one that was killed, and when I grew strong, I killed him." She stared at me. "Does that make me a monster?" "No, baby. They are monsters." I growled, wishing I could kill them, tear their hearts out, and eat them. As if Athena could read my mind, she placed her hand on the side of my face. "No need getting worked up for me. When I grew strong enough, I killed them all and took over as alpha. Fuck, you're so fucking strong, you know that? I breathed in wonder. You overcame that darkness, shining even brighter. Athena looked away. I don't feel so strong sometimes, especially when I'm with you. The feeling is mutual. I moved towards her, cajoling her to rest on me. I sensed that she was closed off and guarded right now after her past, so I did the right thing. Kept my mouth shut and held her tight. Asterisk, 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 asterisk. Athena's POV. I dreaded going to breakfast today, for no other reason than the fact that I was going to see Regan there. I felt so embarrassed at the way I shamelessly told him the gritty details of my past. I immediately ran inside, not wanting to face him, but there was only so much that I could hide from. The pack will gather for their usual breakfast here, making me even more anxious. On getting there, I see Regan, who waves and I wave back. Walking to my seat, but to my surprise, he motions me to his table. My brows shoot up to my forehead, but I play it cool. Regan shocks me even further by bringing a morsel of food my way. For me, I was in shock. Yes, come on, eat up, he insists, and when I lean forward to eat it, the entire pack erupts into hoots and cheers. My face burned, but I was so happy on the inside. Regan adds to that further by announcing to everyone that I was his mate, and they should accept me. My heart expanded with love for him, even more, when at the Alpha's meeting he set aside a seat for me beside him, instead of staying alone as usual. Unable to hold back the emotion I felt, I kissed him briefly, all the while wondering what I did to deserve such an amazing man. Chapter 18. Growing Close. Athena's POV. Something had changed. After that evening at the river, Regan had changed totally. So much so I hardly recognized the man he was now. He would seek me out during public gatherings, talk to me like his equal, and spend every available free time he had with me. I was starting to love this new side of him, even though, at every opportunity, I kept on reminding myself not to fall for him. Like tonight, he whisked me away to his cabin in the woods after a day filled with meetings. His exact words were, "I want to forget about the outside world for a while." It was the first time we were spending together that was truly alone, with no interference or the consciousness of people around. I found out that Regan was easier to be around when he felt free of the burdens of being an alpha. He was more himself. We were currently watching a movie, a crime thriller, but for the life of me, I can't remember what was said last. My legs were in Regan's lap and our bodies were pressed together. I was constantly distracted by the smell of his cologne and the potent alpha musk that was all his. The combination was driving me nuts, taking over my senses. "If you continue staring at me like that, you might just burn a hole through my face." Regan's tone was amused, his black eyes flicking up to me. My cheeks flamed at the realization that he caught me staring. I dug into the popcorn bowl, stuffing my mouth to keep from replying, pretending to be fascinated by the scene on TV. "Hey, there's nothing to be ashamed of." He cupped my chin, pulling my gaze back to his. "If it were up to me, I would spend my days watching you." My mouth dried, and it wasn't for the lack of water, but the sexual tension spiraling out of control. It addled my brain, and that was what I blamed for my actions. I moved forward, cupping the sides of his face, and slammed my mouth on his. Regan didn't move for the first couple of seconds before he took over the kiss, expertly dominating my mouth. We were on the sofa, so it was easy for him to lean over me, pressing me into the cushion. The kiss went from sweet to dirty into seconds max, as Regan's lips found their way down to my neck and sucked. My back bowed, and I clutched at his shirt, desperate for some skin-on-skin contact. He obliged by whipping it off in one move, at the same time removing my bra. He bent to suck at my nipples, turning me into a whimpering mess, as I grabbed at his locks. I needed more, and I arched at my hips in silent request. Regan didn't get the hint until I moved my hands down to his jeans and popped the tab. He shot off me instantly like he was zapped by electricity, breathing hard. "Shit, Athena," he growled, raking a hand over his hair when he saw my state of undress. He walked over to the fireplace, obviously torn up about something. I wondered if I had done something wrong, and then I started to yank my clothes back on. "Athena, wait, no." He rushed to stop me just as I was about to leave. "Don't go." "Why?" I cried out, tears stinging my eyes. "Is it that you don't want me?" His eyes flashed with anger. "Of course I do. I can't stop thinking about you every damn time." He grabbed my hand, bringing it over to the bulge tenting his jeans. "Does this look like I don't want you? Then why?" I whispered. "I want to take this slow, no rush," he implored. On some level, this was important to him, so I acquiesced. I needed to put the brakes on my emotions, and distancing myself from him, at least physically, would help. "Okay," he smiled then, pulling me to his side and placing a kiss on my forehead. "Wanna complete the movie?" Aside from the disaster that we avoided, we managed to move on, and Regan started to trust me enough to release important tidbits about his life and his past. I appreciated him and reciprocated by telling him the little things about me that he should know. For example, the fact that I'm addicted to sweets and chocolates. I chipped that in while we were talking, having no idea that he stored that information away. The next day at his cabin, he went all out for her, surprising her with the ingredients necessary to make chocolate cake, her favorite. And what warmed her heart even more, it was the fact that he wanted them to have a bonding experience by making it together. There she found another thing about Regan. He sure knew his way around the female body, but put him in the kitchen, and he floundered around like a fish out of water. It was cute yet funny, so I couldn't resist laughing when he made several mistakes, like breaking parts of the eggshell into the mixture. Of course, he paid me back by rubbing a part of the cake mixture on my face, which evolved into a flour fight, leaving the both of us covered in flour from head to toe. It was fun. I loved it. And it wasn't bad that our cake turned out good too. That action drew us closer, allowing us to bond properly. I found myself waking up each morning, eagerly anticipating Regan's offer for the day, or looking out for him whenever I was in a crowd. He would send me flowers, cookies, or chocolate when he was busy, and those small gestures touched my heart. We texted back and forth, and I also discovered that Regan had a wicked sense of humor. I still laugh out loud from time to time whenever I remember his horrible jokes. Our desire for each other had grown, and it was getting increasingly hard to stay apart, reminding each other why we decided to not have sex. All in all, while I loved this new development, I kept waiting for the other shoe to fall. Chapter 17: The Departure. Athena's POV. I kept refreshing my phone every 2 minutes. Nothing. No calls. No texts. I can't believe Cyril left without saying goodbye. No matter what might have transpired between us, I thought we were friends first. A hole the size of a fist was in my chest, the size that Cyril used to fill up before. Tired of sitting on my ass all day, I decided to take a walk around the house, branching into the gardens. I saw 3 ladies fisting amongst themselves, and that sparked another pain in my heart. Unbidden tears started to fall on my cheeks silently as I moved out of sight so they didn't see me gawking at them. "Athena, what happened?" Regan's voice floated to me, and I immediately started to dry my tears, not wanting him to see me as weak, but it was too late. He draws me into his chest, soothing and murmuring words that I couldn't make out. "I'm sorry for sending Cyril away. I promise that things will be different between us henceforth," he said when I pushed away from him. "How do I know that you'll keep your promise?" My voice cracked. I was tired of being hurt over and over again by him. "Trust me." He kissed my forehead before walking me inside. I was happy that I took his words at face value, not surprised when I saw him later that day, and he acted like I wasn't even present, attending to Candace. Instead of watching them together, I remained in my room for the rest of the day. The next day passed with me staying in my room all day, only stepping out for food and retreating. It was late at night, and I was having difficulty sleeping. Just as I was about to nod off, I heard a knock on my door. My heart rate spiked up, thinking that at first it was a fluke, but when I heard it again, this time louder, my eyes darted to the digital clock on my table. 10:21. Who the hell was it? By this time, deep down, I was hoping it was Cyril. Probably he came back for me, but when I jerked the door open, my stupid hope went down with a pop. It was no other person than Regan. I wanted to slam the door on his face, but one of us had to be civil. "What do you want?" I say coldly. He looked me over, his eyes heating. Usually, that would have been enough to get me going. But I was just numb, unable to feel anything. "Get dressed," he says simply. I remain rooted in that spot. Why? He closes his eyes, letting out a sigh. "Please, Athena, for once just do what I ask you to without questions. I promise it'll be worth it." That last statement reminded me of Cyril, striking another lance of pain through my heart, but I ignored it. I stepped back to let him in and walked over to my closet. I took the clothes to my bathroom and shut the door with a flimsy lock, even though I knew that wouldn't stop him if he decided to come in. I changed quickly into my favorite sweatshirt and sweatpants, then swapped on a hoodie for extra warmth. "You look good," Regan noted when I came out. I said nothing, picking up my phone. "Can we go now?" He said nothing about my tone. Walking ahead of me, I noticed we were taking another route, not the usual way to the entrance. We came out through the back, where there was already a black SUV idling at the curb. Seeing the car sparked some form of anger in me at his audacity. He was already so certain that I would obey his commands like a dog on a leash. I ignored his outstretched hand to get into the car, getting in on my own, as the car pulled away from the curb. And Regan took the next turn. I wondered where we were going. Where are we going? I craned my neck to see the signboard, but Regan was driving too fast for me to make out what it was. "You'll see." A small smile toyed on his lips. When we were approaching a thick forest, and there was no more road to pass, Regan killed the engine and got down. I followed his lead, which made his mouth tighten. "This way." He veered to the left, towards a well-used path, allowing to walk ahead of him. It was pitch black, but my eyesight was good, and it wasn't a problem to navigate the terrain. We walked for a couple of minutes, after which my ears picked up a sound. A trickle of water rushed, indicating that there was a stream nearby. I turned to ask Regan, but he passed by me, slipping his hand into mine, tugging me along. We passed a thick cluster of bush, but what? The next thing I saw took my breath away. It was a river like I'd guessed, but there were night flies all around, illuminating the area, giving it a kind of ethereal glow. "Holy crap, it's so beautiful," I gushed, seeing a steep rock I had to climb to get over the ravine. "What is this place?" Sounds of different animals echoed, and the air here was fresh and clean. It made me feel like I'd been transported into another world. It's mine." Regan sounded weird, and he was staring intently at the water. "You own this place?" He licks his lips. "No, I meant that. Come on, let's sit." There's a smooth rock that has been weathered down over time. There was a small basket besides, which Regan reached into to bring out a thick, fluffy blanket, laying it over my legs. "Thanks." He nods, a bit distracted. "So this place, it holds a lot of memories for me. I used to come here when I was a kid and just stare into the river for hours. It gradually became a place for me to come to whenever I felt disturbed." I looked at Regan's side profile, noticing the pain in his words. This place held a lot of memories for him, and I knew it wasn't easy to open himself this much to let me in. Regan was flawed, but he was trying. That I could appreciate. I reached over to drag his hand into my lap, resting my head on his shoulder. "Thank you for sharing this place with me," I murmured, and Regan's eyes crinkled at the corners with a smile. He laid his head on top of mine, and together, we sat there in silence, watching the stars. Chapter 16: The Apology. Athena's POV. It was only Regan's voice we heard, but it seemed like he was just passing by. After his footsteps receded, I could finally breathe easier again. So I turned to face Cyril, who was still looking at me like I hung the moon. My tongue felt heavy against the roof of my mouth as I debated on what to say. A part of me was flattered he could even recognize me in their manner and wanted to take him up on his offer, while the other part rebelled, choosing to stick to the deal I made with Regan. In the end, I chose to let him down gently, not because of the deal I made, but simply because no matter how I might wish to, I do not love him. "Cyril," I laid a hand atop his. "I don't know if I'm sorry. I know this is a bad time, but I couldn't hold my feelings in Athena anymore." "I love you," Cyril told her earnestly. His declarations were tearing her heart apart. "I can't love you," I cried out. "I'm sorry to, but I can't, Cyril." I cup his cheek, and he leans into her touch, briefly closing his eyes. My fate and Regan's are intertwined, no matter how I would love to deny that. "Listen to me, Cyril." I make him look me in the eye, my heart breaking with each word, either knowing that I'm inevitably pushing him away. "Your mate is out there, and I want you to do the right thing by giving her your heart, not me." Cyril was already shaking his head. "But it's you I love. It's temporary. Trust me, I know," I told him. His face fell, his eyes turning sad. "But Athena," I was already standing up, not wanting to give him ideas that I might change my mind. Already it was too painful to watch him continuously profess his love for her. Meanwhile, the man she wanted stayed aloof. "I have to go," I choked out. Cyril tried to hold onto her, but I managed to pry his fingers off my arm, not looking back as I walked away. Each step hurt more than the other, but I forced myself to leave, not entangling the situation more than it was. I had no idea how long it took me to walk home, since I was lost in thought, but I suspected an hour had passed by. I tried to sneak in, which was hard to do barefoot and looking disheveled, with my makeup running down my face and my hair scattered, the bobby pins askew, as if the universe was conspiring against me. The last person I expected to see was the one I bumped into in the lobby. "Where have you been? I've been looking all over for you." Regan was holding her to keep from falling over when they collided, but I pulled away. "Maybe you didn't look hard enough," I say. "Where is she?" I looked around for any sign of the tramp. Regan's brows caked together in confusion. "Who?" "Candace. You know, the one you ran after, leaving me high and dry." His frown cleared out. "I didn't leave you high and dry." "Oh?" I folded my arms over my chest. Hard to do since I was still carrying my shoes in one hand. "What do you call leaving me in a room full of people I didn't know because you had run after her?" I spat her name with distaste. "Athena, you need to listen to me." "No," my hand cut through the air. "I'm done listening to you." My wife's got cut off because Regan pressed his mouth to mine, shutting me up. I was still angry at him, but I couldn't deny that the kiss was good, so I kissed him back. Regan pulled away just as flames fan hotter. I licked my lips, searching for a taste of him. "Candace ran out because I had told her to leave. I knew her being here would hurt you, so I told her to go home." That took the wind out of my sails, especially at the touching gesture. It made me realize how foolish I was to have gotten worked up over nothing, but still, something wasn't quite clear. Even so, she reacted way too emotionally for someone who is just a friend. "It's obvious she has feelings for you." For the 100th time, "No," Regan explains. "There's nothing between us, and I feel absolutely nothing for her." "I saw the picture of you and her, Regan," I accused, standing on my ground. There might have been nothing now, but you guys were an item before. Fine. You're right about that. The truth is, she was supposed to take your place as my mate before you came along. So what changed? I asked. You. A simple word, but packed with emotion. The ones I could decipher hurt me, making me regret every question. So why me? Why did you choose me? I don't know. He shakes his head, looking lost. There's a connection between us that we can't deny, and I acted on that. But aside from that, the ring and the title mate means nothing to me. I blinked rapidly to hold back the torrent of tears threatening to fall. Everything that fell from his lips just proved me right. If you don't want me, that's fine. Release me and then you can go back to Candace while I stay with Cyril. I had no idea where that came from, but I wanted to hurt him just like he did me. Regan's face changed immediately, rage taking over. Good luck with that. I wonder how you're going to do that since he's already leaving. For a second, my heart stopped. What? Yay? He disobeyed my orders, and I sent him away. I shake my head rapidly, not wanting to believe him. No, you're lying. I looked outside, and I had the insane urge to go look for him despite how late it was. My feet were already moving in that direction, but the next thing I knew was being held up against Regan. You're not going anywhere. He said it against my ear. No, let me go. I have to find him, I screamed, threshing wildly in his arm. Please, let me find him. Why the hell is he so important to you? Regan growled. I had no idea. I was crying until tears fell down my cheeks. He's my only friend. Please. Regan. Don't let him leave. I hate to hurt you. Regan's tone was gruff. But it's already done. He had to leave. It's for the best. I broke down in his arms, sobbing like crazy. I'll never forgive you for this, I kept saying over and over again as Regan dragged me away. Chapter 15: The Transformation. Athena's POV. I couldn't believe that I was the one in the mirror. Holy smokes, I looked so beautiful. When my room got invaded by the glam squad this morning, I was apprehensive and a little terrified about what to expect. I didn't know who sent them to my room, but I suspected that it was Earl or Regan. They came here a good 3 hours before the party, scraping, waxing, oiling, and stretching every piece of my body until I almost cried out for help. Several times, I had toyed with the idea of ordering them out, wondering why I must be subjected to this torture just so I could look good. After the brief stint with Regan at the front door, I was afraid it would put a damper on the trip, but surprisingly Cyril was upbeat and kept the vibe going. I ended up choosing a red, sleeveless dress after much back and forth, which I'm having second thoughts to try out. All done. The makeup artist, whose name was Clara, piped up, dusting my cheekbones with her brush. She had glued on fake lash, making my eyelids feel extra heavy. My hair was already curled and pinned to stop my head to give me that princess look. I was already laced up in my dress since the stylist figured it would be hard to get me in it without disrupting their work. I opened my eyes and gasped. It looks so good. I was an entirely new person, the dress molded to my curves, hugging my narrow waist before flowing to my ankles. The shoes that came with it were a perfect match, and I looked ready to slay, despite the height not being something I'm used to, and I had to be conscious of every step. I was late already, so I went downstairs for my ride after thanking the entire team. A car pulled up at the entrance, and a tall guy covered in tattoos jumped down to help me in, taking good care that my dress didn't wrinkle. The event center wasn't far, but I would have preferred walking over there to breathe in some fresh air. I was shown inside as soon as I alighted by a guy I'd seen around Regan frequently. As soon as I stepped through those big doors, I was immediately transported to somewhere magical. Flowers were littered everywhere, and the chandeliers sparkled with every step I took. To the side were servers at the makeshift bar while the center was cleared, and there were tables scattered about. The arrangement gave the hall the illusion of being massive, but it was airy and gave room for people to mingle freely. Thankfully, I wasn't too overdressed, blending in with the other ladies quite well, although a couple of men stopped to stare as I walked past. I made my way to the bar, leaning on the wall for a reprieve from the shoes. "A gin and tonic, please," I said to the bar lady, raising my voice a bit to be heard. "Not an ideal drink for a woman like you." Regan's voice floated to me, and I turned slightly to watch him glide over to me, his steps as smooth as a panther. "You look breathtaking, if I might add." Casting an appreciative look at the woman, I leaned heavily on the now, glad to have an excuse. "Oh, pray, tell, what type of woman am I?" I took a sip of my drink, taking a moment to drink in the fine specimen that was Regan. He had his hair slicked back, away from his face, highlighting his features, and was wearing a black tux, which appeared to be custom-made. If I thought that Regan looked hot in casual clothes, in a tux he looked positively yummy, good enough to eat, the sweet kind. Beautiful, sexy, sensuous, tempting. While he spoke, he leaned in gradually until we were barely inches apart. His eyes dipped to my lips, and the air around us was electrified with desire. That moment, I forgot why we were even fighting and just wanted him to kiss me. I thought he was going to until a ruckus in the center of the hall pulled his attention. We looked over at the same time, and I just had to roll my eyes. Of course, it was Candace. I had never hated anyone in my life, but now, I was starting to form a deep dislike for her. Candace had her gown clutched in her fist while she ran towards the doors with tears streaming down her face. Regan looked stricken. Athena, I'm sorry, but I have to go." Regan touched my arm briefly before running after her, and I had to close my mouth from the shock. "Regan," I hissed, calling him, but he ignored me. He didn't just do that. I can't believe he left me here for the har. Hurt bloomed in my chest, so I turned to the waiter who had witnessed everything and ordered, "Give me a bottle of your finest wine, and keep it coming until I say stop." She obeyed, and I set out to drown my sorrows in alcohol. Unfortunately, my stomach didn't agree with alcohol, which found me spewing the meager contents of my stomach in the bathroom less than 30 minutes later. I rinsed my mouth and stumbled out of the bathroom, walking aimlessly with my heels in hand. I ended up in a darkened hallway sitting on the floor, thinking about my life. It wasn't until I heard Cyril's voice that I snapped out of my funk. "What are you doing here?" I jumped up so fast, I almost fell over. I didn't want him to know why, so I lied. "Resting in a dark hallway," he arches a brow. "Not believing me? It's not safe for you here. Come on, let's go." The thought of facing that large crowd and Regan made me feel queasy, turning my stomach. "Nah, I'm good." I sat back down. Cyril sighed, so stubborn. He sat down beside me, copying my posture. "I know what happened. You know." I had closed my eyes, trying to shut the rest of the world out. "About you and Regan," he says, and instantly my eyes pop open. "What?" He held up his hand. "No need to explain." He turned his head to look at me. "You know he doesn't treat you well, right?" I blow out a breath. "Cyril, look, I already told you that it's complicated between me and Regan." "Then uncomplicate it," he urged, facing me fully while holding my hands. He looked torn up about what he wanted to say. "I know this isn't the best time to say this, but I don't think I can keep it hidden anymore, especially when you look like this." His eyes roved over my face, going soft. "I care about you, Athena. Deeply. More deep than I've ever felt for anyone, and I want us to grow deeper between us." My mouth dried, thoughts escaping me. I had no idea what to say to Cyril's heartfelt declaration, but thankfully, I was saved from replying by Regan's voice. Chapter 14, The Shopping, Athena's Pov. This or that. I mumbled to myself, looking between the dresses. They both look too serious for what she needs. There's a shindig coming up, an annual party hosted by Regan, the alpha for his pack, and the neighboring packs to every year. And as his mate, I was expected to attend, only I didn't bring many dresses along. Looking forlornly at my closet and the 2 dresses on the bed, I was stuck between what to choose. I wanted something casual and feminine yet screamed, "Don't mess with me." The first one was a long summer dress with spaghetti straps crisscrossing my back in a small slit, which would go well with a pair of strappy sandals. The second was my favorite leather jacket and ribbed pants, which would be paired with my new knee-length boots. The first was too girly, the second a bit gangsterish. Here lies my predicament. The reason why I decided to even attempt dressing up was due to Regan's attitude. Recently, he's completely changed, done a whole 360. In his attitude, now he was more attentive to me. He would randomly seek me out to talk or ask how I'd been. I've even noticed that Candace didn't accompany him everywhere like before. I was shocked, but in a nice way, even though I was still suspicious and skeptical that his changed attitude would last for long. I had a feeling he was jealous of Cyril and me and was now trying to stake a claim. Ugh, I groaned, falling onto the bed. All this thinking was giving me a headache, making me work up an appetite. I headed downstairs to grab a snack, bypassing women who were walking about setting up decorations. It made me nostalgic, remembering events like this that went on in my city. I was snapped out of the trip to memory lane when I heard Earl's voice. "Hey, Earl," I greeted him, walking past him to grab the bowl of fresh fruits. "Oh, hi, Athena," he replied, turning back to the man he was speaking with, and I overheard him saying, "Oops, please excuse me." Walking up to me, he flashed me a stressed smile. "How are you?" I shrugged. "Good." Looking past his shoulder, I nodded at the work going on behind him. "I can see you're busy. Trying to organize a party is tough work." He laughed weakly before his eyes narrowed on me. "Are you ready? Do you have a dress and everything you need?" "Yeah, I do." Biting into the skin of my orange, I sucked in the juice. Not sure which one would go well though, my summer dress or the leather jacket. Tough one. Earl looked horrified, his eyes nearly bulging out of his pockets. "What? Don't you have a dress? Like a dress?" My brows wrinkled in confusion, hoping it was not what I thought. "You mean a proper evening gown?" "Yes." He looked relieved, but it was short-lived after I shook my head, saying no. Crap, why didn't I think of that? He rubbed at his forehead. "Look, Athena, you need to get a proper gown, not just casual clothes. That won't cut it, please," he begged, leaving me dumbfounded, and he rushed off to correct a project that had gone awry. Where am I going to get an evening gown from? A day later, after making plans with Cyril to go shopping since he dressed very well and knew the terrain like the back of his hand, I walked out of my room about to leave the house in a haste. I was already running late. We had agreed to meet by 2, and this was 2:15 and he was waiting for me. Looking for something in my handbag, double-checking if I had missed my wallet or phone, when I bumped into someone. A wall of hard muscle to be precise. Boop. I was already going down, but a strong arm kept me from falling. I looked up and saw Regan's handsome face staring down at me. I moved out of his arms faster than you could blink, righting myself. "Sorry, I didn't see you," he rumbled. "No," I laughed nervously, waving his apology aside. I wasn't looking at where I was heading to. "Yeah, so you good?" He looked concerned. "No scratch or anything, I barely touched the floor." So his question sounded ridiculous. "I'm fine." "Really?" "Okay, double quotes," he trailed off, and I looked at him before I looked away. Gosh, this was ridiculous, and this conversation was super awkward the way we were acting like strangers. Regan looked me over, noticing my outfit. "Are you going somewhere?" "Yeah, I'm going shopping." At his inquiring look, I explained further, "For the party. Earl says I need a proper evening gown since my regular clothes won't cut it." I started to walk, thinking he would take the hint and leave me alone. But instead, he started walking beside me. "Oh, I can take you. It's a long way, and I know some pretty good stores around." Damn, this was tough. No thank you. I rubbed the back of my head. I've already got it sorted. Regan looked so surprised. He laughed a bit as if the thought of me walking like a normal person around town was ridiculous. "How are you going to get there? Come and let me take you." Think of it as a way of me apologizing. "Regan, it's fine," I insisted, but I was too late. Cyril was standing in front of the house, leaning on his car, and it was obvious he was waiting for me. Regan's eyes bounced between me and him, staring at Cyril so intensely, with his hands bunched into fists by his side. I got worried, praying they didn't jump into a fight because of me. "Regan." Cyril gave him a deferential nod, but he sounded weird, different from how they usually interact. "Cyril," Regan replied, but his tone was just as neutral as Cyril's, if not cold. Chapter 13. Strained Silence. Athena's Pov. I hate my life. It seems that the fates had it in store for me to live miserably. Regan and I argued, further straining our already fragile relationship. I chose to steer clear, and Regan didn't even bother seeking me out. I felt tired and frustrated, seeking the comfort of my home. There was a packed training today, which I was reluctant to attend, but then again, I was bored. Not having anything to do or anyone to talk to would do that to you. Cyril cajoled me to attend, and on reaching there I discovered that it was a big thing. I avoided the crowds, not wanting to talk to Regan. Young boys and girls were dressed in their workout clothes, in groups of 5, and had started training. "Athena, over here." I followed the direction of Cyril's voice, finding him at the edge of the group. "Hey, this is big," I marveled. "Come on." Cyril dragged her to a boxing ring, and instantly people gathered, not giving me a chance to back out. A bell rang and Cyril charged at me without warning. I almost screamed before my instincts took over, and I fainted to the left. Throwing punches, one landed on his shoulder, and the crowd went wild. I felt invigorated by the win, pushing harder, but Cyril was faster than I gave him credit for. He grabbed my hand, pulling away so that he could sweep my legs out from under me. I landed on his body with an oomph, chuckling when I realized how easily he overpowered me. Cyril rolled to the side, leaping to his feet in one smooth move, and extended a hand to me. "Thank you," I say. The hairs at the back of my neck prickled, and I turned to see Rehab staring at us from across the field. Chills ran down my spine because he was just staring at Cyril, looking ready to kill. Regan's POV. What the hell is wrong with Cyril and Athena? How does he think he can disrespect me like that? Does he think I don't see them? Running around, being all chummy and shit. Seeing him and Athena's bodies, one which I had pressed up against me not too long ago, all rubbing up against each other, while sweaty rubbed at me. "Cyril," I boomed from the other side of the sparring ring, and they jumped apart like guilty rabbits. "Yo man, what's up?" His easygoing grin pissed me off even further, so I ignored his outstretched hand. His smile faded when he saw my face. "Is everything okay?" "What's with you and Athena?" I growled. His brows popped up, and then he smiled. "Nothing. I'm just being a friend my ass," I exploded. The kid in my anger flying off. "Think I don't see y'all sneaking around." What the hell is that supposed to mean? He got defensive. Since when is it a crime to take a beautiful woman out? So you do have feelings for Athena? I was in shock. I had that suspicion, but having heard it so blatantly was a shock. He snorts. "Why are you pretending like you care? You fucking ignore her all day, and now you pretend that you care." "She is my mate, you nitwit," I yelled back. "Are you sure that she's your mate? Because it looks like your relationship is strained." Cyril taunts. "That's none of your business." I take a step towards him, ready to destroy that pretty face that he liked so much. "Alpha," a young boy called out, stopping me in my tracks. I was torn between teaching Cyril a lesson and attending to the kid. My eyes promised retribution as I walked away. Athena's pov. Wanna learn something fun? Cyril popped his head into the window, blocking my book. I groaned. My body is still sore. Then this will loosen you up, I promise. He smiled, popping his dimples, and I couldn't resist. I jumped to my feet, following Cyril while he led the way. It didn't occur to me until I saw the familiar red-brownish colored wooden door. Really? I exclaimed, whirling around. You brought me archery? Told you it's gonna loosen you up? He winked, bursting into laughter as he skipped away before I could hit him. I rolled my eyes, but quickly got to work. I had no idea how to shoot an arrow or even that this place existed. I had taken to staying in my room or going out to either spar or hang out with the ladies. Plus, I was always bumping into Regan and Candace there, which made me annoyed. Come on, I've got some new moves you should try. Oh, I teased, swallowing when Cyril walked behind me, his body warmth seeping into my exposed skin. Yeah, I'm going to have to touch you though, is that okay? Cyril had been respectful enough not to touch or come too close to me after the scarf incident at the market, so I understood why he was a bit apprehensive. Go on. I bobbed my head, steeling my body against the sensation. Cyril's hands landed on my hips, pulling me closer. I gulped, feeling his hands trail up my body, avoiding my chest region until he grabbed my hands. He folded my fingers into a fist, twisting my arm upwards, bending low so he could speak into my ear. I resisted the shivers. So, you take your fist and move your arm upwards ... like this? He demonstrated the move, and to be honest, I couldn't repeat it if my life depended on it. Every point in my body had zeroed into the areas our bodies connected. Athena, are you with me? His velvety tone pulled me out of the sexual gaze and I nodded, swallowing the saliva that had gathered in my mouth. The door opened suddenly and Regan burst in. I froze, not knowing what to do, but Cyril appeared relaxed, not worried in the slightest. Relax, you're too tense, Cyril spoke into my ear, and the buildup was driving me crazy. It was like we were having foreplay ... but with our clothes on. I felt Regan's eyes on us at all times, and even when I braved a glance in his direction, he didn't even pretend to hide it. Gradually, I relaxed enough to carry on sparring with Cyril as usual, but there were some times that our bodies collided intimately, making me feel uncomfortable. I called it quits an hour later, the tension building up in the room almost suffocating me.